Hey everyone, it's Allie, and with the next patch for Path of Exile 2 coming in just a short few weeks, I want to make a video going over my personal predictions on what I think is going to happen in 0.2, while at the same time discuss and critique what I currently think are the pain points in the game and what I personally think should be addressed as some of the first issues. I'm going to try and cover as much as I can in this video, but there might be some topics I'm not going to really go over, which we're most likely skipping just because I either think they're in a pretty good spot or they're just not really worth worrying about currently. In terms of topics we're going to try to cover in this video, we're going to go over skill balance, ascendancy balance, item balance, and the endgame. I feel like these 4 points are what GGG really need to focus on, and it's what is going to be really important to a lot of people as well. Sure, the story might be pretty, sure, the game might be pretty, and the combat might feel fluid. None of that's going to really matter if the endgame doesn't feel fun, if the builds don't feel fun, if there's just not much diversity for people to play with. So that said, I think the first place we need to start is going to be specifically in the skill balance. For skills, I think there's 3 major areas that GGG need to address. Spells are in dire need of help, but they have their own issue with Archmage and the looming threat that causes. Quarterstaff Skills, but honestly, this is probably a pretty easy one to tackle, and I could very easily see them doing quite a bit of quarterstaff balancing. And then bow skills kind of need a little bit of a touch up just because they feel a little bit bland. If you want to start with spells, which is realistically the thing that needs the most help right now, the biggest issue here is, well, Archmage existing. In Path of Exile 1, we had added spell damage that you can get through a variety of sources. This added spell damage allowed you to be able to scale your builds without needing to rely on something like Archmage to do all of your scaling for you. The issue is in PoE 2 we don't have that, and the only other option to be able to make your spell do more damage is to go crit, which, well, Archmage could theoretically go crit as well, and some Archmage builds were, and to scale your gem levels, which, again, Archmage builds were doing that anyway. The problem with specifically scaling gem levels is the egregious amount of mana that spells need in Path of Exile 2. A level 40 skill needs 10.5 times more mana than the level 20 variant of that skill. It is completely unreasonable for any spellcasting based build to be able to sustain those mana costs, and well, if you even want to attempt to, what do you have to do? You're gonna have to start stacking a lot of mana because your mana regen is based off your total mana pool, and well, if you're doing that, why not just play Archmage and just gain more damage? There's quite a few skills right now that are pretty good and have legs to stand on, such as DD and Fireball. But unfortunately with DD, while sure it might be a really fun build on Blood Mage, what do you think people are doing with it? They're literally just playing it with Archmage because it's the best way to scale the skill. Outside of Fireball and Frostwall shenanigans, there basically isn't anything else that's good for spells right now, and they really need to be buffed. Unfortunately, I just don't see how this is going to be done without them basically completely gutting Archmage, because I don't really think they're going to add in added spell damage, or I don't think they're going to really touch up the mana curve too much on skills within just this season. I think there's going to be something that's probably going to be stuck like this for quite a while, and unfortunately, my prediction on spells is that they're just going to nerf Archmage a bunch. For Quarterstaff Skills, the main issue here is just a tuning problem where a lot of the skills just kind of feel bad to use. We have Stormwave and we have Lightning Strikes, and they feel great, but unfortunately, basically all the other staff skills just don't really do enough damage. There's some really cute skills here that have quite a lot of potential if they just did a little bit more damage or had higher attack speed or just, well, felt a little bit better to use. I feel like with just a few touch-ups, Quarterstaffs overall can feel pretty good as a whole, as we did see quite a lot of variety in the Quarterstaff skills that people used on release. For both skills, it's kind of the same thing as Quarterstaff skills, although here I would honestly prefer if GG kind of just took some of the bow skills, completely removed them, and just took a season or 2 to just rework them into something new, because a lot of the bow skills kind of just feel samey. While Ice Shots and Lightning Arrow might technically be a little bit different, one does a set of shards behind enemy while the other one auto chains, there really isn't much of a difference in feel when you use them, and the same kind of goes for most bow skills, but they all kind of just feel the same, where you shoot generic arrow and the whole screen kind of just blows up. I would really like to see some skills here get reworked, or at least touch them up a little bit more so we see people play something that isn't Lightning Arrow. For the Ascendancy Balance, I don't really think I need to say much here, as I think everyone understands what the issues are. Most Ascendancies just feel bad. An example of this is looking at you, Blood Mage, where there's 2 viable builds on the class and your first Ascendancy node literally just completely bricks you and you do not want to touch it until you get your second Ascendancy node. I don't think any Ascendancy should be in a position where your first Ascendancy node actively makes your build and your character weaker and harder to play, and that, in my opinion, is just a really poor balanced choice. There's quite a lot of other examples of this where just Ascendancy tuning has not hit the mark at all, with another good example just being Manga Chayula in general, where it feels extremely undertuned. Everything it does special is just done better by other Ascendancies, and if you specifically look at the bottom portion of the tree, you don't even know what it does because it's just that bad and nobody plays it because it's so undertuned that you're actually better off not taking it and using Spirit for your auras than to instead completely lose all of your Spirit. Now, some ascendancies are complete bangers. Deadeye feels great. Infernos feels great. Demi Legionnaire feels great. Titan feels great. There's a lot of really, really good design that they hit the mark on, but some of the current ascendancies really need some help. I'm really hoping that at least Blood Mage gets some help because that class needs God currently, as it feels just awful. I would say Chronomancer probably needs a little bit of help too, although people have managed to find quite a lot of success on Chronomancer towards the middle of the season, and I'm actually kind of happy about that. Although I personally feel like the class kind of just needs to not just feel like a jack of all trades support, and I kind of wish it had its own 2 feet to stand on in terms of giving it some damage or something to build around that isn't just, look at me, I can freeze the boss permanently. I can't really discuss the melee ascendancies too much, as I completely did not play any of them at all, and I have kind of no interest in playing any of them. The only thing I played was attribute stacking gemling, but from what I heard, for the most part, melee feels okay. It's just an issue of melee kind of just falls over, and life-based builds kind of just suck in general, which is holding melee back rather than the ascendancies themselves being bad. Moving on to item balance, there's quite a lot to say here, and honestly, I could probably make a whole hour video just discussing this one topic on its own. Realistically, when it comes to item balance, there's a few core things that are currently a problem. One, there's just not enough chase uniques, which isn't that major of an issue. The game just came out and there isn't that much content, so this issue will slowly fix itself over time. When I mean chase uniques, I don't mean things like Mage Blood or Headhunter. I just mean high-end, high-value items that do cool things. Think of things such as From Nothing, Against the Darkness, or other high-end uniques. Well, what we currently have to work with are pretty fun. It just feels a little bit too niche, and there just aren't enough different build types that are covered by these items to where everyone feels like they have something cool to aim for. Not everyone's playing an attribute stack. Okay, everyone is playing attribute stackers. So sure, you most likely have thought about chasing something like an Ascendancy, but well, if you want to play caster, you don't really have anything cool to aim for other than, I guess, getting yourself a melting maelstrom, and then, well, that's kind of it. Outside of that, there's also just not enough items that are build enablers. Again, this is just going to be an issue that gets solved over time, and I honestly expect there to be quite a few interesting new build enablers that are going to come with just 0.2. But when I'm saying build enablers, I mean things such as HOA, which just, well, completely allow you to forgo any sort of other worries you have in the game and just stack nothing but intelligence and dexterity. I really like these items, and while they don't necessarily just have to be something boring like stack mana and get damage, stack life and get damage, in PoE 1's history, there have been many items like this that just allowed you to do something that you weren't able to do before and allowed you to play a build in a completely different way. The other issue with uniques, and I really hope that this gets a little bit more of a touch up, is just a lot of uniques just feel really bland and boring and just they don't really do that much or aren't very interesting. Rings are a really good example of this, where half the rings just aren't anything special or do anything cool, and I would love to see just more unique effects on all these uniques that actually make these items unique rather than there just being some random small little added benefits that might be a little bit niche or a little bit hard to get somewhere else that, well, doesn't make that item that interesting to go for. Realistically, in terms of items, it's just going to be a thing that is going to get better over time, but I really hope, at least for this first major patch of the game, that they put a little bit more effort into this just to make it feel a little bit more special, so we just have more builds and more diversity to play with. While in this section, we can also discuss crafting and all those issues with it. I feel like that by itself is its own topic, and I feel like everyone understands crafting's kind of in a pretty bad state right now, but I really just don't think that in the past 3-4 months or so, they've had enough time to even look over everything and figure out a solution on how exactly to make crafting better than what it currently is. And well, if they most likely didn't even have time for that, there's no way they've implemented something for 0.2. I'm sure we might get 1 or 2 new crafting currencies that might do something cool. They did hint at them adding some sort of crafting currency to Expedition, for example. And while we might see that coming out for 0.2, I don't think any sort of major changes are coming. And well, crafting is going to kind of be in the same spot. Finally, let's discuss the endgame. Now, this has quite a lot of things that we could say about. I feel like the endgame is a little bit polarizing, where some people kind of like it, some people don't like it, but I feel like the majority of people are probably in the camp where they just aren't happy with it. I'm personally in that camp as well, where I feel like there just isn't enough to do in the endgame. And again, I don't feel like this is too big of a problem because again, the game just came out, they've been working on it for a while, and they haven't had time to implement everything, and we know more things are coming. We've data mined harvest related things in the files, for example. So realistically, we just gotta give them more time to get everything set up, make the rest of the game good, and then, well, they could just do exactly what they did in PoE 1, where every 3 months they just add something new to the end game, and given in a year or two, I don't really think this is going to be too big of a problem. Where I do think we have some endgame problems that could be addressed immediately, or should be addressed immediately, are going to be just in the core functions of how the endgame itself works. Personally, I don't like towers, and I think towers just need to die. They feel horrible. They feel like awakened sexants from PoE 1, but they're somehow even worse, and I don't really think many people actually enjoy interacting with them. I feel like GG is a little bit tone deaf on this topic specifically because in 0.2, they're making a change to towers where towers are now going to be required to be completed for you to actually get credit for you touching the tablet at the end. This means you have to go clear the whole thing, and you have to kill all the rares in it, which, well, is just going to be really annoying. While sure, this is going to give you a little bit of extra loot while you're setting up your towers to make an area of your map super juiced, I don't really think anyone really cares about the extra little bit of loot, especially if you're doing something like breach. How are you going to get an even half decent breach in there? And, well, if these are going to actually count as maps, that means they're going to benefit from the towers. And, well, a tower might not steal your super juice tablet rolls that could have instead gone on a proper map, which would have been a lot better in the example of something like a breach. I really hope they just completely get rid of them. And while we're on the topic of having to complete the whole map, personally, I am really not a fan of you having to kill every single rare in a map because that's just not how you played PoE 1 ever. And it's not how anyone really plays any RPG ever. It just feels horrible being forced to specifically go and kill every single rare. The issue here isn't specifically clearing everything. You should be clearing a whole map because typically the map is pretty rewarding. But the problem with it is let's say you just decided to not go to a tiny little corner of the map. You completely missed a rare there, and then you get to the end of the map and the game tells you there's one rare left and you now have to backtrack all the way to the end. Sure, they added in waypoints into maps, but realistically, should we really be happy with this as a solution, or should we consider this more as a band-aid? I feel like them having to add in waypoints into the maps kind of speaks that there's a problem here rather than something that feels good to have because, well, the maps in PoE 1 are really big, but we never had to have waypoints in there. Why do we have waypoints in PoE 2 map? I'd prefer if it was something like kill all but 2 or 3 rares, so you were still incentivized to kill everything in the map, but you didn't have to kill literally everything. So those edge cases where you missed a rare just never happened because those are just honestly really frustrating gameplay. Outside of that, the only other things that I can reasonably see them do within the few months that they've had to work on this is to work on the passive tree a little bit more. Personally, I feel like the current Atlas passive tree is just a little bit too gimped in comparison to what we have in PoE 1. I get why it's dumbed down because the old one is just simply way too much to try and get a new player to wrap their heads around, and they did want to make PoE 2 a lot more new player friendly. But my god, it's a little bit too dumbed down right now, and there just isn't enough content in them. I can definitely see them adding a few more passive points here, and they've already teased some, so hopefully we get quite a few more changes to the tree and, well, the tree itself feels a lot more rewarding and a lot more interesting with some decisions for you to make versus the current cookie cutter setup that basically everyone used. Finally, then this is more of a cope than anything else. And again, I feel like if they would ever add something like this into the game, it'd be something that'd take them half a year or more to consider and think about, especially given how much they currently have to do. But I would love to see Scarabs come back into the game and potentially just be a complete replacement for towers because, well, I feel like people would enjoy Scarabs a whole lot more than they currently enjoy towers and tablets. Those are my opinions and my current thought process on how PoE 2 is currently shaped. I feel like it's in a pretty good spot, and I feel like it's a diamond in a rough. And while I might not necessarily think it's the greatest game ever right now, I definitely think it has legs to stand on. And given a year or so, and given it coming out of early access, I do think it's going to be in a really good spot. I am curious to see exactly what we're going to get in 0.2, and I'm just hoping that GG are looking to address some of the things that people have been complaining about. If you have any questions or you'd like to discuss any of this further, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below, and I'd be more than happy to discuss any of this with you whenever. I also stream on Twitch every single day, so feel free to come by Twitch and talk to me about any of this there as well. Or if you simply just want to come and hang out with other kitties and be a part of our community, I'd be more than happy to see you there as well. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next video.